Hello, everybody. Once again, welcome to another episode of Second and Saints. John Hendricks alongside Ross Jackson. Not together today, but that's okay because we kind of have a little bit of a different groove and setup. And of course, we're going to be back for our live show tomorrow on Thursday. That is for those who are listening. So it'll be a fun time. We got more details on that if you haven't heard by now, SoCal. But at any rate, Ross, how's things going, my man?
Wonderful, man. Wonderful. It was nice to have like the day off, but then be right back in the mix today. It was like a physical kind of practice, back in pads, all that good stuff. Great. Feeling good in a new spot and everything as well. It's been awesome. So feeling good. Feeling good. How about you, man?
Happy Ross is good things. That's for sure. So I mean, I'm good. You know, it's been fun. Family left on Tuesday, but so I kind of getting, back into my groove and stuff like that. And so it is what it is. And so now I got to make it till August 19th. So it'll be okay. But obviously, thanks for tuning in, guys. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe. We got a lot of Saints stuff to talk in. Day 12 of Saints training camp. And of course, we know the biggest topic, right? It's Justin Simmons. Yep. He's here on a visit, which as of Wednesday, 4:02 Cali time is, kind of going on and stuff. It's this afternoon time frame. But obviously, we talked about the news last night that it is a visit. It's not a tryout. It's nothing like that. But look, Ross, we've been talking about this for months. Like, we've been talking about this possibility for months, why it made sense, why Justin Simmons would be a fit, why he would complete this defense, where we saw him at the Legacy Bowl, Marcus Robertson, the ties. I mean, what more can we talk about with Justin Simmons?
I think one of the things that we could talk about is stuff that Dennis Allen was pretty overt about, and that was the contract. Ooh, the spicy numbers. The reported asking price for him was somewhere in the neighborhood of about $18 million per year. Obviously, the Saints are not going to fork up that kind of money, but I thought it was interesting, Dennis Allen saying that they were pretty far apart when they spoke back in spring, which gave us a little bit of an indication that they did speak back in spring. So that was good to see. And then mentioned also that they think they're closer on things. So I assume, and John, tell me if you took something different away from that, but I assume that means that they're closer when it comes to the money in particular. Is that kind of how you read that as well?
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember here that the Saints have $14 million in cap space. Just a little bit. It's like $14.2 million right now. And so, look, a one-year deal with Justin Simmons is not a problem, right? You can put it in a certain way, structure it to where you can put on a void year and such. I mean, I would gather it I don't think this is a multi-year situation. I think this might be a one-year play possibly. But at the same time, the Saints can make this work. Now, I know people have talked about Alvin Kamara and all this other stuff. The issue with that is next year. Like, he's getting paid this year, but it's not about this year. It's about next year. And so I don't think it's any type of sleight of hand to him. But look, I think it goes back to DA's comments too, talking about how the safety position, like, nobody has there, right? And they got to obviously earn it. And they're in the business of adding good players to the roster. And Simmons is an excellent player, even though he's like 30 in that territory. Like, he can still ball, right? He brings leadership, brings playmaking skills, ball hawking skills. He's really good in a lot of areas. And so, look, I take it as this is a possibility. Like, before, the money and where he wants to be is not exactly aligned. And now I know other teams have been interested, obviously, accordingly reported interest, that is. But I think this makes the most sense because the ties, they know what they get out of the player, and he's a guy that can come in here and plug and play.
Absolutely. And it's great for Justin Simmons too. Like, this would be a good landing spot for him because he would be in a defense that would showcase him and put him in good situations. That has always elevated its defensive back play. We've watched them over and over again. They signed Janoris Jenkins when they had starting corners. They drafted Paul Adebo when they had Janoris Jenkins. They drafted Alontae Taylor when they had Paul Adebo. Then they drafted Kool-Aid McKinstry when they had both Paul Adebo and Alontae Taylor. And oh, by the way, that entire time Marshawn Lattimore's been in the building too. Like, this is what they do. They always go to try to improve this area. It's what happens when your head coach is a secondary guy. It makes perfect sense. And so I look at that, but then I also look at the fact that, like, Justin Simmons getting a one-year deal here in New Orleans gives him an opportunity to make it so that there is no doubt that he'll get that big contract going into the 2025 offseason. It's kind of similar to what Chase Young did, right? And I think the Saints could approach it the same way. They could bring in a contract potentially that's a little bit less than what it is that Justin Simmons has asked for. I would try to get under or as close to $10 million as possible, and then throw in a bunch of incentives and then see how things go. And there's no issue with that. So that's the way that I look at how the Saints could potentially maximize this a bit, and it maximizes things for the player as well.
Yeah, and look, I think there's a win-win solution here. And obviously having talks before help, I think, in a lot of ways. And, everything I continue to hear, it's just like, oh, we want to see what the vision is for the player. If he agrees with the vision, like, again, you can go back on past episodes, and I think even going back to February with our HBCU Legacy Bowl, we've been talking about this for months. And so, again, we've talked about the possibilities, but kind of hit the highlights of where Justin Simmons would fit in this defense and where things could go if he does sign.
Yeah, the good news is that Justin Simmons is versatile. So remember what it is that the Saints wanted to do with Tyrann Mathieu and Marcus May, and that's effectively what you could see them do with Tyrann Mathieu and Justin Simmons. Justin Simmons can play down in the box. He can also be a deep safety that allows you to be able to use Tyrann Mathieu in the slot and in the box, contributing there. You can put both of them down on the line of scrimmage on third downs, and their Okie fronts, drop some down and back into coverage, have them rush, doesn't matter. I think that that's the really exciting thing about the potential addition of a Justin Simmons. And one of the reasons why New Orleans would go down this road, even though they'd be perfectly happy with Tyrann Mathieu and Jordan Howden, or Tyrann Mathieu and Jonathan Abram. Like, the Saints are not the desperate ones in this situation. They're fine when it comes to their safety position. But when you get the opportunity to add somebody like Justin Simmons, you at least you take the call, you make the meeting, whatever it is, and everything. So I think that, like, the fit for Justin Simmons, for me, the interesting part of it is that, like, you can kind of do anything you want with them. And I think that that's what the Saints wanted back when they signed Tyrann Mathieu and Marcus May and moved on from Marcus Williams. They wanted that versatility, but they didn't get the health that they needed from Marcus May. They would be banking on getting the health that they needed from Justin Simmons, and then being able to achieve what it is that they tried to achieve with Mathieu and May a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and it's just fascinating to me because I think a lot of people say, well, the Saints can't get high-profile players, or they don't have any of this firepower, all this other stuff. But, I mean, Chase Young coming here, Justin Simmons coming here. Like, there's been players over the years that just choose New Orleans. And so it's
Willie Gay.
Yeah, Willie Gay Jr.
Carr,
didn't have to do that. I mean, yeah.
Tyrann Mathieu.
So it's just Jarvis Landry is another one.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Too. Like, there's just a lot of them. And so I just think this would be a move that would help set them over the edge. And, look, I think their defense is stout, like, especially what we've seen in training camp. But this one would, like, tip them over the edge. And so I would not have questions about defense at all. Like, and I already felt good about the secondary too. And I know Marshawn's not in the mix. I know Paulson's not in the mix. We'll get into some of that here in a little bit, obviously. But, on paper, at least, we talked about it the other day that I've seen encouraging things from the defensive interior, and I've seen a lot from the pass rush to make me believe that the Saints defense answered a lot of my questions, especially going down the depth chart in some areas and such. But look, you put a Justin Simmons back here with Tyrann Mathieu, Paulson Adebo, Marshawn Lattimore, and then a healthy Alontae Taylor in the slot. I can't tell you how good that makes me feel, especially the fact that their pass rush looks like they're going in the right direction. Yeah.
And I don't know. I think it just adds a lot to what the Saints have always tried to do. It's like a perfect fit for what their MO has always been when it comes to this kind of stuff, everything like that. He would be a great addition for this team. There's absolutely no doubt about it. He would be a great addition for this team, and would help to, like you said, establish and put this defense way over the top in terms of where they would have the ability to be. And it makes them, again, the core strength of the team, which then lightens the burden for how quickly you need something from your offense, which is undergoing and getting a new system. It's interesting how much they've focused on adding talent to their defense, even though they've been trying to revitalize their offense. They went the coaching staff route on the offensive side. They didn't need to touch the coaching staff on the defensive side. Now they're just looking at adding talent over there. And so I think that that's a really, really good, really good idea and good approach. That's what I'm looking for by New Orleans, is keep building up your defense, because your defense is going to have to carry you a little early in the season while your offense gets adjusted to this new scheme. And as they say, defense wins championships. And even though I don't consider the Saints a championship contender, even though I don't consider them a championship contender, if you're going to go out there and compete field the most competitive team that you can. And that's the thing that I've always appreciated about the Saints direction, is that they are always looking at trying to field a competitive team that will go out there and compete year after year after year, no matter who's counting them out, no matter who's under center, no matter who's at head coach. It doesn't matter. This is what they've continuously done. And so that's why this makes perfect sense to me as something for them to pursue.
Yeah. And I know we talked about it. Like, it was the would you rather have Hunter Renfrow or Justin Simmons? And we all said Justin Simmons because what he could do for this defense and how it could just take him over at another edge. And I was pointing in my head as like, you read my mind about the defense wins championships. And again, we're not saying New Orleans is going to the Super Bowl or anything like that, but it does give them a much favorable outlook. And I would just tell you, hands down, they'd have the best secondary in the conference for sure. Well, not, I mean, the division for sure, but the conference, they'd be pushing that conversation too with the Justin Simmons. I like this question because I know some people have looked at it this way, because we've talked about the offense. We've talked about some of the struggles we've seen in some aspects, but you know, the luxury of a Justin Simmons versus the maybe necessity for a legitimate wide receiver 3 or offensive line depth. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I just don't know where you find a wide receiver 3 or offensive line depth and how this stops you from doing that, because there's not really options out there. And the options that are out there, the signing of Justin Simmons, I don't think really keeps you. It doesn't predicate you and keep you from doing any of those things. So for instance, like Hunter Renfrow is not signing a multi-year $10+ million deal. He's going to sign a vet minimum deal wherever he ends up. David Bakhtiari, if he gets signed somewhere, it's going to be a vet minimum deal wherever he shows up, if he shows up, and all those other things. And so I don't think that signing Justin Simmons keeps you from doing things. We've also seen the New Orleans Saints already address wide receiver and address O-line, and they've showed you about how much they're actually willing to invest in those positions already anyway. They brought in guys like Jesse Davis. They brought back Mark Evans. They brought in a guy like Chandler Brewer, who was unfortunately moved to injured reserve and stuff like that. While I'm not saying that those signings really help you when it comes to offensive line depth, if the Saints were interested in addressing their offensive line depth at a greater price point, they would have spent the money at a greater price point. They did not. Same thing happened with wide receiver. There's been a lot of injuries at wide receiver. So who did they go out and sign? They signed Kevin Austin. They brought back Marquez Callaway. They signed Samson Nakua. They didn't go out and get Hunter Renfrow. They didn't go out and spend at a bigger price point. That tells you that they're not interested in spending at a bigger price point there, but they're interested in spending at a bigger price point when it comes to their defense and when it comes to Justin Simmons. That's where they're going to spend their money. So I think that you've already seen from the New Orleans Saints that they don't really have an intent on spending money at wide receiver or spending money at offensive line. And I think that that's fine. It might end up being the wrong choice later on down the road, but it just goes to show you that like going after Justin Simmons doesn't stop you from doing the other things. They were never, it doesn't seem like they were ever interested in doing those other things in the first place.
Yeah. I mean, risk or reward with some of those moves. And look, I feel, again, we've been talking about Justin Simmons for over 10 minutes now, but you know, I feel encouraged by no worries. I mean, you know, we don't have structure on the show. Like, I feel encouraged by what I saw from A.T. Perry today. Like, he looked phenomenal today.
Cedric's looked good.
Played best. I agree. Cedric Wilson looked good today. He's been looking really good. Again, the question for me is can they survive the injury bug? Because we saw Equinemius St. Brown starting to work off the side. We haven't seen Bub Means. Rashid Shaheed, they said that's more precautionary right now and being asked, because that's kind of what was said before. Same thing with Paulson. It seems like it's more precautionary that they're trying to make sure that they're good to go. But still, you know, it's unsettling because of some of the injuries. And Cedric Wilson was hurt, you know, or Cedric Wilson Jr. was hurt a little bit earlier a few days ago as well. But look, I've liked what I've seen from Samson Nakua. I think he's somebody to keep an eye on, right? And of course, what you got with Marquez Callaway and such. And so, again, I'm not sitting here telling you that this is the desired outcome. You know what I mean? Like, is where they want to go. But as you go deeper into preseason and all this other stuff, that these veterans aren't going to have too much of a choice, right? Like, you can't. There's going to be a point where you're going to be like, okay, the dollar amount versus do I even play this year is one of those things. And I think of like a David Johnson. Remember, he was there for a mini camp tryout. He wanted the money. He didn't get the money. And there's like nobody really like out there for a David Johnson market. And then he comes back, practice squad opportunity, all this other stuff. So, I mean, I'm not telling you that's the end all be all, but I mean, it just makes sense and ties into what your thought process is.
Mhm.
Benjamin asked another question. How much better is Justin Simmons than all the guys that they have? Because look,
Great
Jordan
question.
Howden, Will Harris, I've been encouraged by what I've seen from him too. Jonathan Abram, those three guys would stand to benefit the most playing next to Tyrann Mathieu. But JT Gray, obviously, he's more of your special teams guy. Ugo Amadi's hurt right now, so that's not a good thing for him. And then you got Lawrence Johnson, Millard Bradford, and some of the other guys out there on the roster. I mean, so how much better is a Justin Simmons than what you could get from Jonathan Abram, who looked comfortable in this system last year and had some great rapport with Tyrann, or a Will Harris, somebody that you got from free agency, or a Jordan Houghton, who they have big expectations for this year?
Yeah, I think you get a better takeaway potential and playmaking potential with a Justin Simmons than you get with some of the other guys. Not to say that they can't generate those takeaways. It's just that the role that he plays, like Jonathan Abram, is going to be almost exclusively either a split safety, a deep safety, a cover 3, or a box guy. You're probably not going to have him as a lone safety, deep downfield, single high type of situation. You could do that with Justin Simmons. Meanwhile, Jordan Howden is more of a deep safety than he is a box safety. Even though they've been working him at box safety and trying to get him that experience, they look at him as a post safety. So he falls a little bit more under a singular category. Will Harris is somebody that gives you the versatility to be able to play him anywhere that you want to, which is really nice. But that's really good to have as a depth piece, not as a starter, right? And so when it comes to Justin Simmons, you get somebody that's different from all three of those guys in a way that elevates the game that you can play over on the defensive side. I don't think there's anything wrong with Jonathan Abram, Jordan Howden, or Will Harris. It's just that you could do more with Justin Simmons than you can with any of those other guys in a way that's going to greatly impact your game. That's where I think Justin Simmons becomes the difference maker at that position.
Yeah, and I mean, I just think about the evolution of the NFL with this being more of a passing league and some of the opponents that the Saints have to play this year and such. And I mean, not saying that the experience isn't there for the other guys, but a true proven veteran who can come in here and make a big difference. And look, as well as I do, that they've been practicing on these turnovers and doing some things here and there. And so look, again, it's a hungry defense that has preached a lot of competitiveness here in training camp. And in adding one more piece onto the puzzle for that competitive nature it's a bunch of dogs out there, right? Like they always talk about getting a bunch of dogs out there. Like that would be a bunch of dogs out there if they get a Justin Simmons. And look, even if it doesn't work, like I get it that yes, it could take him over the edge, but I already felt good about where the defense could be even before he was like even more of a legitimate option, if that makes sense. I feel like they could still be strong. I still think that they would be really good, but this could take them from being really good to being really great to potentially being elite defense. Now, of course, a lot of that is on the pass rush, but from what we've seen, I think there's reasons to be encouraged by that. I think as of right now, if we put together the roster, we know the pecking order. We know what everything would look like based off of training camp. And of course, that unofficial depth chart, guys, just take that and throw it out the window. It doesn't matter.
Unofficial.
It doesn't matter. It hasn't mattered for years. It doesn't make a lick of sense. Like, it's so hilarious not to get on my soapbox, but like, people understanding how Sean Payton operates. Like, he's been doing that for years, man. Rookies always start at the back of the bus. Like, it is not new information. It's just thrown out there and people just make of it what they want to. That's the day and age we live in. But, we're going to see what happens with Justin Simmons. Obviously, visits ongoing. Again, I expect it to go good, go well. English. And of course, we're going to find out. And so we found out about the Simmons news, last night. It was like 9 something. That's Cali time.
Late.
So most of you were in bed. But at any rate, we'll be on this story. We'll be finding out and hope to get some more information off that. But look, let's dive into training camp. Day 12. I had to think about it. I almost said day 3
somehow, some way.
I'm like, oh man, I felt embarrassed if I said that. But day 12, man, we saw Jake Haener come back. He's wearing the like bandage on his face now, but everything seems like it's a good, response there, and everything's good to go on that front. So that's great to see. getting a couple of players back in the mix, seeing DeMario Davis more around, like him and Jalen Ford, like they were working off to the side, and then DeMario and Ford both come onto the field and kind of like rooting on the defense late in the team period. That was really good to see. So it's like, now I don't worry as much about that. Marshawn's still observing. Like, the only player we haven't seen is Kendre Miller. And again, we've talked about that till we're probably blue in the face. But, man, what are some of your early takeaways from day 12 of training camp?
Yeah, I agree with Jake Haener's big day. I thought that he was awesome, really good in those red zone drills. The Saints kind of did a lot of situational work today. So they ran some red zone stuff. They worked with crowd noise. They did some down and distance simulation. They did some drive simulation, but without a clock. And all these other things too. So really, really pleased with what we saw in a lot of that work for the offense. I thought the offensive line had a pretty good day today. I don't know how much of it is them getting used to what it is that the defensive line likes to do. And this is the part that stinks about like evaluating offensive lines in training camp, is that the goalpost has to move all the time. And so really we'll find more out like, week 8. Of the regular season, because we'll have a better understanding of where things actually are. Then I thought that a couple of wide receivers, I thought A.T. Perry had his best week of camp, or best day of camp, excuse me, and continuing his good week of camp. And I thought Cedric Wilson looked really good today too. Yeah,
no, I agree. Haener for sure was the one. I thought, Derek Carr didn't miss a pass in any of his team drills. Like, I mean, I thought that
Derek Carr was really nice today.
So, I mean, and he made some pretty good decisions, but I think some of the deep balls, some of the things that we saw from all of the quarterbacks. I mean, Rattler didn't get as many reps today and stuff, but he still had a couple of good throws. But Jake Haener responding again. We don't have a distance person in this QB2 battle, right? I mean, I just don't see it right now. Like, it'd be tough for me to make a decision right now, and of course I think it's still tie goes to the runner and such, but defense still getting after it. I thought Chase Young looked good today out there. We kind of stopped talking about him a little bit because he was blowing it up early in camp, but still noticeable. He's still doing a lot of really good things out there. I thought Michael Jacobson kind of came to life today. And of course, I know this is a guy that kind of did some things back in like mini camp and stuff and kind of got on some people's radar, but like, I think he had a low key, really good, solid day. And so, I mean, I think that's good to see. Is interesting too, because we got to see all the kickers and punters in action today too.
Yes. Yeah.
That was the first.
I think that's pretty indicative of what the plan is for the preseason game. It feels to me that you're going to have, kicking situations handled by one pair in the first half and then handled by the other pair in the second half, maybe is what that kind of indicates. I want to mention though real quick that yes, on Michael Jacobson, he had a huge catch over Isaiah Stalbert, who by the way left at one point, got rolled up on during a kick return drill, went and got looked at. It was a little scary, not gonna lie, but then came back and he was out there, finished out the day, looked good and stuff like that. But he was the victim of a Michael Jacobson leaping contested reception.
Almost like a moss.
Yeah, it really
I don't know if
was.
it's a total moss, but it was beautiful.
Yeah, it was a really great play. And so like all these quarterbacks getting more and more comfortable with Michael Jacobson. So definitely a name to watch as we go into the preseason. Samson Nakua had an absolute moss during one-on-ones where he skied over in the end zone and made a catch, came down hard on his back, but was fine. And so again, just nice stuff from all around. All around in the passing game. I thought that the offense continued to look comfortable for another day, which is good to see. Derek Carr looks so comfortable all of a sudden. Like I don't think we talk about him very much because like he had that one like really, really, really good day a couple of days ago to where like the only incomplete pass that he threw was a throwaway. Yeah. And we talked about, yes, that's right. And so we talked about that, but like just stringing days together, looking good, looking comfortable in this system. I think it was really, really good to see. That was really good to see. And it was nice to see, as you mentioned, some of those injured players back around a little bit too, just kind of showing some progress and everything, which is nice.
Yeah, I think you're starting to see a little bit, I don't want to say division in some of these players, but you're starting to see some of the guys that are really responding and really coming to play every day. I think the offensive line is starting to find a little bit more of a groove. And I say that in the sense of they're starting to open up more running lanes. Like James Robinson had a couple of really big runs today, which I thought was really good. I think their pass pro has been pretty good. there's a couple plays where there's just nothing downfield, but I was just seeing how much of a clean pocket some of these quarterbacks had, and it was good and refreshing to see. And so, again, I think it was a really balanced day is what I think. And of course, you go track this, that the defense started hot. The defense was dominating for a while. Now the offense kind of fought back a little bit. Then the offense started punching through, and then they had their best day. And then ever since that, I think we've had this balanced approach to training camp, which is refreshing to see. And what I want to see, I don't want to see a one-sided defensive effort. I don't want to see a one-sided offensive effort. I like the balance. I like the competition. Shoot, the fact is, somebody was I put a video up there of the wide receivers and Keith Williams doing push-ups, and I didn't think to make another connection at first, but the defense did it the other day because they put like this competitive nature where whoever wins that last rep in the one-on-ones, the losing people have to do push-ups. And so Joe Woods was on the floor doing push-ups, you know what I'm saying? And so it's a competitive atmosphere. It's a competitive environment. And so I'm excited to see a preseason game. We got one more practice, and then they got the travel day, and then Saturday's a preseason game, Ross. I mean, we're right here, dude.
Man, I can't believe how quickly this has all moved.
I know, it's crazy. And so we've got legitimate competitions. Like we talked about kicker the other day. Punters and legitimate competition, that we're seeing. A little bit disappointed in what we saw from some of the punters today. I think for sure. And Charlie Smith was pretty good. He missed one. And then Blake Groupie, look, we're inconclusive on one of the kicks. All of us are. And so he did 6. He definitely made at least 5, including a big one from 52 yards, which was really good to see. And so, I think overall, Day 12 brought us a lot of good stuff. Good gym, some hitting too, man. There are some people some good out there.
Yeah,
man.
Miller Bradford like putting one down on Dallin Holker at one point.
I love to see it, but also I'm like, Cali, that's like tight end first team. Don't do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, be careful.
This is a good one. I wanted to bring this up real quick. It says this team feels better and more talented than last year around this time. I can buy that a little bit. I think for me, what makes the difference is this offensive staff, personally. I know the defense, they've kind of kicked it up a level. And DA even talked about that he feels like the defense has another gear. But I got to tell you, man, every time I watch Clint Kubiak and Andrew Janako work with the quarterbacks in the offense, like I'm just so enthralled with it because of their intentionality and just the fact of their attention to detail. Like it just hasn't happened for years. You know what I'm saying? And so, like he's sitting there with moving his feet, catching passes, running with receivers, running with running backs, doing all this stuff. Like he is just doing everything he can. And so I think the execution can be there. And I think the proof is there with the quarterbacks doing as well as they have been in practice too.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the biggest question right there, is the word that you said, execution. I agree that I think that this team is better right now than it was last year. I disagree that it's more talented. I find that they're about the same. I think that they took some steps forward at edge rusher. Adding Chase Young will do that for you. Took some steps forward at linebacker. Adding Willie Gay will do that for you. But I think they took some steps back. I don't think they got better at running back. I don't think that they got better at wide receiver. In fact, I think they took a little bit of a step back at wide receiver. But here's the thing. Did they? Because maybe what it is that not necessarily that they didn't get better at certain spots or that they got worse at certain spots. They might end up being and performing better at all of those spots where maybe they didn't necessarily move the needle in terms of free agency additions and things like that, because the system helps them move forward. And I think that's the intent from the New Orleans Saints. They revamped the roster last year. They revamped the coaching staff this year, because a lot of the criticism from last year, I don't know why I moved the emphasis on that syllable, but
okay.
They I got you on that one. They had last year, a lot of the criticism was, they're very talented as a roster, but they don't have a system to support it. So I think that what they did was that they went and they got the system to support it. Yeah, right. Yeah, and no identity. And so I think that they got the system to support it. I think that they got the identity. Now all they have to do is be able to execute all of those things. So even though they didn't necessarily get better at running back, didn't necessarily get better at talent when it came to wide receiver, didn't necessarily get better, in my opinion, in talent on the offensive line, with the taking into account the loss of James Hurst, the loss of Andrews Pete, the loss of Ryan Ramczyk, they might still perform better because the system's better. So I think that like they improved. And if you add Justin Simmons, you get better at the secondary. So I feel like you can improve at all three levels of your defense. But on the offensive side, you're waiting to see how does the system help and how are you able to execute it? I think that's got to be the big thing.
Yeah, I'm with you on wide receiver and like the offensive line. Like I get those things. I think defensively, like some of the second year players for me, and again, we've talked about second year players in this system or on this team, like the Nathan Shepherds
defensive
or the Colin
interior,
Saunders and all that other stuff. Like I think that's encouraging to me. But you know, there are some things that need to be shored up. And again, I this is probably one of the best I felt in training camp here since Drew used to be here. You know what I'm saying? Like that's, I guess, my feeling here is that the vibe, and I'm not saying that's going to lead to much, but I just think the vibe overall is it hadn't been this good since Drew was here. Like I think it was okay a little bit when Jameis was here, like the first year, like 2020, like going through all of that stuff with Jameis here and stuff. Like I felt a pretty good vibe there, but it just hadn't been the same, you know what I mean, since Drew was here. And so I think that's the best way I could put it. And is it going to change anything? I hope, but will it? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like this team is going to be battle tested. They're going to have to show a bunch of people. And of course, this is the rah-rah time for every team. Like every team is going to win the Super Bowl. Every team is going to do this. You know what I mean? Like this is
every player's an all-pro.
How it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. And I've seen Cam talk about Super Bowl and all that stuff. And like, I understand all that. Like, I get it. You got to have the mentality. Like, you don't want to go and be like, I mean, I think we can be good. You know what I mean? Like, I guess we could do something. Like, you know, like, your season's kind of over before you even did it, you know? And so I think there's some extra drive. I definitely think they've made some good additional pieces here, but you're right. Like losing that much on the offensive line, you're banking on Trevor Penning, making sure that he's where he needs to be. You're banking on Taliesin Fuanga being that guy. You're banking on Lucas Patrick, presumably right now being your left guard. You got to make sure that Landon Young is going to be your next James Hurst. It's kind of like a bunch of what if type things, especially like a Marvel situation, like a what if Marvel thing, if you will, because I'm a nerd. But
love it.
You know, if it pans out, great. But what if it doesn't pan out? What if you get injured more? What if all these other things happen? Like that's just a tough spot to be in. And so we've told you before, this is kind of like a 2-year window for this team. And so it makes sense to go after a guy like a Justin Simmons. It makes sense to add to the room like a Willie Gay Jr. I mean, I feel like those people who've talked about rebuilding and all this other stuff, like this is why it's just not happening, because they feel like they can do enough to move the needle to be in a position where they can compete.
Yeah, they went and did the hardest thing that they had that they could have ever done, which is last year. They feel that they addressed their quarterback position. And I know some people might agree and disagree with that. That's fine. Doesn't matter. They feel that they've done it, right? Their job, I heard a friend of mine say this not so long. Their job is to first guess. Our job is to second guess, right? And so like we ask the why do this, why do that, all this other stuff. But like their job is to first guess. They get the first guess. They get to kind of figure stuff out. So they feel that they have addressed the quarterback position. Based upon what I'm seeing so far in training camp, I'm willing to agree that they are better off at quarterback than they have been in the past. And so it stands true. And so I think that might be one of the reasons why the vibes are up and things like that. So I think that like you're good there. I just think that the biggest thing now is, can you execute? Can you take the new system and not take 12 games to get it straight? Can you get it under your belt within the first 5 games while the defense holds it down in the process and stuff like that? Like that's going to be the big thing for me, because if you start to fall behind after that Kansas City Chiefs game because your offense still isn't together yet, you're still trying to figure everything out, work the kinks out, all this other stuff, that's where you get into trouble. That's where you lose that game that makes you an 8-win team instead of a 9-win team. That's that game that loses you out of the playoffs, all those other things. That's what you want to try to avoid. So that's going to be the biggest thing for me.
Yeah, I agree. They got again, tough draw because you got Dallas in week 2 and Philly in week 3, but you got to win at least one of those games. Like I just don't think you can sit here and say we'll beat up on the Panthers and then lose the next 2. And I think if can't remember, is it Tampa behind them?
Atlanta right after that.
Yeah, I mean you have an opportunity there, but 2 division games in the first part, that's big. But you got to win those intra-conference games too. I feel like, I mean, like you got to win at least one of those. And again, I don't expect perfection, but I expect them trending in the right direction to where they're not this team that just looks like what we've seen the past several years. It just can't figure it out, or the offense limps and all this other stuff, you know?
Yeah, and that was a borderline top 10 offense in the process too, by the way. Like, that's the other thing that's so crazy about it, was that, like, you know, yardage wise, scoring wise, all this stuff, like, they were right there. I think scoring wise, they were in there. I think they were in the top 10 if I remember correctly. And so, like, what you're trying to improve upon is just doing all that earlier as opposed to later. Like, that's the thing that you're trying to improve upon when it comes to the offense. And then adding wrinkles and adding the things that, you know, generate explosiveness in NFL offenses and all that. Obviously, like, that is a big boon, of course, too. But I think for the most part, like, you're trying to be as productive as you were on offense last year, at the very least, but be more effective with that production so that it's not in the second half against Los Angeles Rams when you're down, or in the second half against the the second half against the Detroit Lions when you're down, against the Jacksonville Jaguars when you're down. It can't be that. It's got to be stuff that you show up early and start punching teams in the mouth. And if you can do that, then all of a sudden you're in a really, really good place, because you still have an easier schedule toward the back end of your schedule, sans the Green Bay game. Because I think that game's going to be further complicated by the fact that it's the night before Christmas Eve in Wisconsin. No, thank you. And then you have a bad division still that does not seem intent upon getting better, especially on the defensive side of the football. And so every opportunity is there. And so far, what we've seen in training camp says that the Saints should be ready sooner rather than later to compete as best as possible when it comes to those opportunities. And I'm excited to see that. I'm very, very excited to see that.
Yeah, and we're gonna find out quickly. You know, I don't know. Like, here's another side question for you: how much stock are you gonna put into this preseason game? I know we're kind of jumping ahead here, but, like, I think it's a legitimate thing, because I think what tends to happen is, you know, you hype all this stuff, or you talk about all this stuff in training camp, and then people are excited, and then they see the first preseason game, and it's like, what is this? You know what I mean? And of course, you've talked about, like, a watered down version of the offense and all these other things, but, you know, what's a realistic preseason game look like for this team to say, okay, I feel good about what they did out there?
Yeah.
Regardless of the score.
Yeah. If I'm the Saints, I'm keeping as many starters out of the preseason as possible. I think there are some guys like Taliesin Fuanga, Trevor Penning, that you probably want to get some time in the preseason. That makes sense to me. But I don't need to, like, if I'm the Saints, I don't need Derek Carr to take snaps in the preseason. I don't need Chris Olave to take snaps in the preseason. Why do it, right? Like, yeah, right? Like, all you're doing is risking injury for them to go down there and run that watered down version of an offense that doesn't replicate what you're going to do in the regular season at all. So even if they got a little bit of chemistry, they got a little bit of chemistry doing what exactly? You know what I mean? Yeah. So, like, that would be my biggest concern when it comes to all that. So I think that for me, the way that I look at how you use these preseason games, that you're looking at the depth and you're looking for guys that are jostling for bigger roles. I can't wait to see Cedric Wilson and A.T. Perry. Like, those two guys in particular, and in fingers crossed, maybe Mason Tipton, who left today's practice with a hamstring injury. If he's able to, that might be precaution as well. Issue. Right. So we'll see how things go. But hamstring injuries have caused a lot of trouble for this team already when it comes to their roster. So maybe we don't get to see him, but we do get to see Samson Nakua. We do get to see Kevin Austin. Like, they're those guys that are jostling for positions. That's who the preseason for me is about. I'm not going to walk out of the preseason with any expectations or any changed expectations on the regular season. I think that it's more so about, can you get something out of your offensive line starters? Can you get your defensive guys that need some reps, those reps, to get comfortable within that system? Because you're always going to play a little bit more of your defensive system than your offensive system, just based upon what the limitations are of those two things. It's vastly different. And then the other guys like Jordan Mims trying to earn a role. Cedric Wilson trying to be the wide receiver 3. A.T. Perry trying to prove that the guy that he was over the last 7 games of the season is more representative than the guy that he has been through the first couple weeks of training camp and everything like that, up until his big day today. And I would say his big week, because I thought he had a good Monday too. I think that that's the big thing that I'm watching for more than anything else. But I'm not about to walk out of the preseason with any expectations about what the regular season is going to look like.
For sure. Who Dat Record says he's got Nakua and Tipton making the team.
Ooh,
Maybe. I don't know. That's a good one. I mean, I tell you, I wanted to throw out that I wouldn't forget about is Stanley Morgan Jr. I think
of
low-key has
course.
been
Yeah, yeah,
doing
good
some
point.
pretty good things too, especially in special teams. And then Bub Means on the practice squad. Look, if Bub Means doesn't get back here soon, he might get the redshirt freshman treatment.
Yep.
That might happen, but I hope he comes back. Like I want to see
Me too.
Bub Means. I want to see him play in this offense. I think he's very talented, but again, the farther we get into camp, we're on day 12. And just again, guys like Kendre Miller, we haven't seen him since day
Mhm.
one. Now, Bub Means is starting to get, and I think Dennis Allen even kind of held in on this too about like once they get into this week time frame, like that they've been gone missing, then I think it's a lot more concerning than
Yeah,
a
good
couple of
point.
days here and like because he brought that up with Rashid Shaheed. He's like, I don't
Mhm.
think we've hit a week yet. I was
Oh,
like,
it's Paulson.
okay.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, it's
Paulson. Yeah,
Paulson.
that's right. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
He has said Paulson. Thank you. But even so, that mindset, if that's how they're viewing it, then those guys that are out more than a week, I think I have a lot more concern than the guys who are just like a slow. Like Equinemius St. Brown was kind of flirting with that time frame. I feel like for
Mhm.
sure. And then, um, you know, it's unsettling, but at the same time, it does give opportunities to Samson Nakua. It does give opportunities to you said Kevin Austin Jr.
Mhm.
Again, the Jake Haener, Spencer Rattler thing that has to be sorted out, and so I think that's
Oh, yeah, of
obviously
course. I
really
didn't even say that.
disappointing. And guys like in the linebacking room, I'm excited to see this linebacking group out there. I really want to see more Khalid Hudson. I think Loki, he's again another had a solid practice for him too.
Yeah.
Some of the guys on the defensive interior. I think we need to see Peyton Turner and Isaiah Foskey ball out in a little bit in the preseason too. I think that needs to happen. I think we need to see what Jonathan Abram and Jordan Howden do in the preseason. Again, it's going to matter, but kind of like what you said, I don't know that it's going to drastically change the way
Right.
I view this team based off of what I see in camp. And you also said you'd rather see it in the camp versus what you see in the preseason too.
Yeah, yeah, that's my personal preference because I feel like a lot of those times, like the preseason games, it's so, what's the competition you're really going up against, stuff like that. I'd rather see you excel over guys that know what you're going to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
After a little while, I'm not mad at that. I think the other thing, yeah, like on the Foskey and Turner one, I think that's a really, really good one, John, because I think that both of those guys have shown a lot over the course of training camp so far.
Yeah.
And I'm super excited to see more from them. I think Foskey might be one of the most improved players in particular that we've seen over the course of training camp. The only reason why I single him out and I don't include Peyton Turner in that is because Peyton Turner was impressive in camp last year too. The only issue with Peyton Turner is the health. That's the big thing.
Yes.
And so I don't mean to leave him out of the conversation. It's just that like I don't really consider him one of the most improved because he looked dang good last year too. And so Foskey to me is easily one of the most improved players that we've seen from a year ago to this year. And I think seeing him in the preseason, giving him some opportunities there to kind of be the first edge rusher in those reps, I imagine. So I can't imagine Cam Jordan playing. I can't imagine Carl Granderson needed to take many reps. Maybe he's one of the earliest more than he is the first, but Isaiah Foskey should be up there in that rotation. I think he's been very fun to watch, and he's been one of the most improved players for me.
Yeah, I think it's fair to give him a half a game's worth of snaps or something at
100%.
least. I just think so.
100%.
And again, I think I don't know how many past episodes it was. I lost track at this point, but we talked about him being like the difference. Somebody asked about the difference between him at training camp last year versus this year, and it's leaps and bounds better. And again, I
Yeah.
think when you run down the Saints players and all those guys, I don't know. I can't think of too many players that have improved year over year, at least in training camp, like Isaiah Foskey has. Now,
Yeah.
of course, DA is not going to give any accolades. He hasn't arrived yet. He's still got room to improve. He still has plays where it's like, okay, he should have done this instead of that. But I think he's actually playing football instead of sitting here thinking, let me not make a mistake. And I think we picked that up on
Yep.
the AT Perry is that early on, he just felt like he was – I'm trying to think too much. He was doing the Isaiah
Yeah.
Foskey last year, and then like today, dude just balled out. Like he was
Got out of
all
his
over the
own way.
place. He was dominating. He just was getting open over the middle of the field. He was catching almost everything that was thrown his way. I mean, like he just looked like the player that we thought he was going to be in training camp. And so I'm glad to see it now. Like you don't want to wait until like day 20 and 22 in training camp and then your last preseason game to show it. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
do it now and show that you're capable of doing that. And so it was good, refreshing. And so we'll see. Man, I'm just going through because we do that thing where we talk about training camp without talking about training camp. You know what I mean? And so,
It's good conversation, John.
yeah, for sure.
Been
It's
on our
always a pleasure, man. Don't forget to hit that like
days.
subscribe button and all that fun stuff too. Transaction wise, if you didn't know, they brought Mike Rose in. That was a tryout player. He's a linebacking core wearing number 54 now. So that's somebody I'd expect to see a lot in preseason. You mentioned bringing Mark Evans back. Let's see. And then I'm just going through some other notes.
Oh yeah, they
Just
moved
seeing what else comes up.
Chandler Brewer to IR.
Yeah, they did that. And then, man, there's just so many. I think some of the things we might have glanced over this too. I think I saw some people like writing about it and doing stuff, but we've seen Cam kind of go on the interior a little bit. We've seen that happen. Offensive line wise, Oli Udoh is starting to be more of the first team left tackle, left guard. No Shane Lemieux today. I told you and told you this is unfortunate because it seems like a guy who just can't stay healthy right now. Like he's here, then he gets to the work off to the side, then he's back. Now he's out, and so that's the tough sell for him. And so now it opens the door for maybe another offensive lineman. Lucas Patrick is part of that left guard / center, backup center type of look here, if you will. And, rotating on other guard positions. And we've talked about Landon Turner. But yeah, I think this offensive line is going to be tested a good bit too, in these preseason games.
Yeah, for sure. This is where you really get a good read on it. And then I think right now you'll learn more about the depth of the offensive line in the preseason games. And then in those joint practices next week in San Francisco, which are indeed next week, that is the opportunity where you get to learn a lot more about the starting offensive line, I think.
Yes, I agree. And it's funny because the NFL used the Lions and Giants to make sure that they cut down on the fighting because they got fined $200,000 because of the fighting escapades.
Yeah,
and stuff.
Malik
and so
Neighbors and
of
one
course
of the corners.
they did. Yeah, I mean it's part of the game, but of course you don't want to see anybody get injured. But there's going to be some nice fiery competition here. You know what I mean? And I think it's a good chance for the Saints to go up against a good offense, and the 49ers have a really good defense too. I mean, you don't get to the Super Bowl without that. And so I'm excited to see joint practices next week. And, again, we could sit here and rattle off every single name that I think we want to see in Arizona. And we'll probably wait to do that on a later episode. But, again, can it replicate? Can it do the same thing? Now you got more holding calls that are being called. You got more, illegal shifts, or the timing, the rehuddles are going to lead to more false starts.
Yep.
All of this is going to start going from speed to execution in 2 seconds. You know what I mean?
Yep. Quickly. You know what I just realized too? When it comes to the joint practices with the Niners is that there's going to be a little reunion. Isaac Yiadom's going to be back around.
Yeah, he will,
because he's over in San Francisco, so he'll get to see. He got a little shout out today from Will Harris, because Will Harris, Justin Simmons, and Isaac Yiadom are all at Boston College together. Everything, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah, which I thought it funny too, because Will Harris talked to us afterwards, and he said, he pointed out that he was a freshman when Simmons was a senior, and they're actually really good friends. But he's like, he didn't know that Justin Simmons was coming on a visit, and he's like,
we broke the news to him.
My cell phone. And it's like, I'm better to get on some recruiting and stuff like that. Who Dat Records brings up a good point. Yes, the rules too, the kickoff rule,
kickoff
tackles, all those things. That's going to be big too. Let's see. I'm trying to look it through. Bigger Dreams asked a question: is Michael Jacobson a good blocker? And does it seem like Jacobson versus Holker? Valid question. Jacobson seems to have the edge because of the red zone. I don't know if I believe that.
I don't know if I agree with that. Yeah,
but I think he's more known for his blocking aspect. I don't think it's Jacobson versus Holker necessarily, but that's just my quick take. What about you?
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I think Holker is the other guy, because you need somebody that's going to also be able to, because Holker can also contribute to you in the red zone, and he operates really well between the 20s. Good run, good route runner, all those other things. And he has improved as a blocker since he's been here too, which has been nice. I think Jacobson's a really, really good option for your practice squad. But I don't know that it's either or. I just think that we're probably not going to keep 4 tight ends. So I guess it is technically either or, but I don't know that they're necessarily in competition with one another more than it is actually that just like, hey, look at the cool things that Michael Jacobson is doing, and look at the cool things that Dallin Holker is doing. And then maybe if there's a drop off for Dallin Holker, Michael Jacobson could sneak up there, but I don't see a drop off for Holker Holker coming anytime soon. He's looked really good. He caught a touchdown again today, right at the front pylon. And again, more front pylon action from this New Orleans Saints team. And then had that catch on the corner route when he got blown up by Miller Bradford, and he dropped that. But I think that was more because he wasn't expecting to get, mollywopped in practice.
Yeah, and also check notes. They're attacking the middle of the field. That's another.
Yeah, big time.
So good stuff. Any other players that may have stood out today? And yes, Jerry, as a 4:50 Cali time, 6:50 Central time on Wednesday when we're recording this show, no anything like nothing on signing. Like, here's what I would tell you: a typical free agent visit would go like is that you got the player in the building. If this was in New Orleans, they tour the facility, they talk to some of their players, like, you'd have your recruitment efforts out. They go meet Cam, they go meet Tyron, they go meet all these other things. You'd have some coaches come together. You'd have dinner typically with Mickey and DA and talk about the fit and all this other stuff. So it's not like it's just a quick, like, let's meet, let's talk, let's do I don't want to say wine and dine thing, but let's hang out for a bit. Let's talk through this and go bring them dinner and enjoy it. Like, that's kind of what that ends up happening.
Yeah.
So,
yep. 100%. Yeah.
You got made fun of for saying mollywop, by the way.
I love saying mollywop. It's one of my favorite words. Yeah, I wouldn't expect news of a signing tonight. I mean, if there is, great, but I wouldn't expect that tonight.
Yeah. I don't think it's the type of signing where you just like, okay, you just do it and then you just sign it right now on the dotted line. Like, it might be, unless they're dead set on it. You know what I mean? Like, it says, okay, this is where we want. Can we come to the table on financials?
Yeah, maybe it does come together.
I think a player like him, especially if he's taking other visits, he might do the smart thing and just sleep on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what I would expect.
Okay, I know. But again, the ties here and some of the familiarity and the fact that they can use him in the right way, I think it makes it more appealing than the other teams, that's for sure. But I'm not Justin Simmons, and I don't write the checks for this team, so that's the other part of it. But they have the space to make it work,
Yeah, for sure.
Big Dream says it might be a Kareem Hunt situation.
That was wild.
And then Jerry wants to just get it over with so he can breathe. I know. I mean,
I'm not going to be able to breathe one way or another. My breathing is not contingent upon Saint signings.
Sure,
my breathing is consistently limited because my allergies suck.
I was going to say your lungs. But
anyway, and my lungs. My lungs are terrible.
I think you got it right, though, still. Oh, man. Anything else that stood out from day 12 that you want to bring in? I mean, I'm going to go run down my notes real quick, as we always do. And if you got any last questions, by all means. I thought Willie Gay Jr. had some nice moments. I don't want to glance over. Like, he did, like, there's this one play I'm looking at. There's a flip out to Kamara off a fake to Taysom Hill that they flipped it out to the left, and he had the edge to just blow this thing up. Like, he's looking really good, right? I don't want to glance over Willie Gay Jr., but to do that on Alvin Kamara, and Anthony Orji also had a really good play on the outside of Kamara. Now, I'm not going to tell you sitting here Kamara's lost a step or anything, but like, I just think it's good positioning and good linebacker play that we're seeing more than anything, that one. So definitely want to leave those, put those out there for sure. Let me see. I mean, if you haven't checked it out, go to Locked On. Ross has talked about training camp. I wrote about training camp. We're just kind of getting through, that was the meat and potatoes. This is, as Russ likes to say, lanyap. This is dessert.
The lanyap, baby.
The lanyap, you know what I mean? So, but, I think that's most of it. If you want to see the whole breakdown, Saints on SI or Saints News Network. And, of course, Ross, for those who don't know, congratulations are in order. If you haven't heard and you've been living under a rock, Ross, why don't you just go ahead and tell everybody, since I'm fumbling the ball right here, what your new endeavor is, which I'm very excited for you.
Maybach music, baby. Yeah, so I got a really cool opportunity. I'm going to be leaving Saints News Network, or really have left Saints News Network already. My last weekend was this past weekend. John and I will continue to do our show. Nothing is changing here. Nothing is changing over at Locked On. It's just the written work. And so I'm moving over to a new website that's set to launch soon called LouisianaSports.net, which is going to be a free open website for folks to be able to go and check out Louisiana sports coverage. And I will be the site's Saints beat writer. So I will be leading all the Saints coverage and all that stuff. So lots of articles, all that stuff, good breakdowns, everything like that. Our focus is going to be about providing quality content, everything like that. So I'm really, really excited about what's going on there. Everyone's focus is about is about providing quality content, but just so that you know. It's led up by Matt Moscona, the legend himself. And it's an awesome joint venture between two really, really exciting media companies that are kind of collaborating to create this as well. So really, really excited about it. Can't wait to get started. And more info on it soon. But you can go and bookmark the page now, LouisianaSports.net. And then you can also find it on Twitter as well at LA Sports, and then the letters DOT.net. So you can find that over there as well and get subscribed to the Twitter page. But of course, you'll be able to find all of it on my social media pages as well.
Yeah, man.
Thanks, man.
Super stoked for
Thanks
you.
for the congrats, everybody.
Man, you work really hard at doing your thing, man. And so I think
too,
people
man.
need to appreciate that. No, I appreciate that for sure. And so it's a big opportunity for us. Obviously, like I said, nothing's changing with Second Saints, but his written work, he's put some bangers of pieces out there. Like, you want to know about this rugby ball stuff? Dude was on it. Like, anything and nuances with the coaches and just kind of like the inside, the minutia. Let me use another big word. Like, he's on it, man. So you definitely check it out and support those guys as well as us. And Ross, as we kind of wrap up here, tomorrow's the big day. Thursday's the big day. We're gonna be tomorrow. You're gonna see us, and it's gonna look really weird. It's nothing like we've done. We are going to attempt, quote unquote, we're doing our first live show. So if you are in the SoCal if you are in the SoCal area injury, I'm thinking about the Saints injury report. If you're in the SoCal area, why don't you make sure from 5 to 8 tomorrow, and we're going to be there probably a little bit later too, and we might be there a little earlier because we got to set up and all that stuff. Bourbon Street Bar and Grill over in Fullerton, California. We went go check out the venue on Tuesday, and man, I have never felt like more at home than I have walking in there. Like, and if you're a Saints fan, be sure that you go to that to watch your games, because it's like one of the few Saints themed bars. But I mean, it's like as New Orleans as you can get. But we got our live show there. Foco is sponsoring our show. We got giveaways to do. I hope you guys pack this place out and come ready to eat, come ready to drink, all that fun stuff. Have a good time. Of course, be responsible, but we will be out there doing a live show. I think we got all the technical stuff, and we're just going to do what we got to do, man. I think it's going to be a blast. And if nothing else, just come in, pop in, say, hey, we'd love to meet you guys and top shop for a little bit. So, man, Ross, anything else you got for us?
No, man.
Or want to
I'm
add
just
on
really
that?
excited for I'm really excited about the live show tomorrow. It will be live on YouTube as well. We believe we're going to try. We're going to get everything set up.
Should be.
To get everything up there. Yeah. But bear with us as we figure it out, because we've never done anything like this before. I've done it before with other people, but just bear with us. But yes, the intent is for that. The show will still be live on YouTube. The Q&A we might keep with the folks that are there, just as a little something special for the folks that show up, everything like that. But yeah. Otherwise, all good. But no, man, I'm all good. I'm excited for tomorrow. I'm excited for the live show. Excited for a game this weekend. Like, oh my goodness, what a time!
Like Christmas in July, but we're in August. So, all right, guys. Well, again, on behalf of Ross Jackson, that's going to do it for this episode of Second and Saints. Again, if you guys have not liked and subscribed, please do so. Tell everybody about it. I really appreciate all the support that you guys have given the show. And of course, check out those links that we have. There's a chance to score some merch at discount prices. There's also that Amazon link. Use that. That helps out the show. You guys have been terrific. We only look to grow here. And look, it's just training camp. So once the season gets here, it's only going to explode a little bit more. And so we're here to stay, and we're going to keep working hard for you guys and bringing you the content that you deserve. So if you have any questions, feel free to hit us up. But on behalf of Ross Jackson, I'm John Hendricks signing out for another episode of Second and Saints. We'll holler at you on Thursday from Bourbon Street Bar and Grill.